Anyone who's seen more than a few horror movies will be well aware that things often don't go well for the central characters, and the prospect of a happy ending is decidedly less likely than in other genres. These bleak endings tend to be localized to the characters of the story. But not all horror films are created equal, and some dare to take the stakes to a near unimaginable, literally global scale. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for What Culture, and here are 10 great horror movies where the world literally ends. Number 10. Army of Darkness. The original international release of Evil Dead threequel Army of Darkness had a much bleaker ending than the cheesier, sunnier one-shot for US audiences. In both versions, Ash consumes a potion that allows him to return to the present. But in the international cut, the final punchline is that Ash miscalculated the amount of potion he had to consume, drinking 7 drops instead of 6, causing him to oversleep by centuries. And so when a raggedly bearded Ash finally awakens, he's in a future post-apocalyptic London where humanity appears to have been wiped out entirely, and he can only lament that he overslept. Unsurprisingly, this ending was loathed by the studio, who persuaded director Sam Raimi to shoot a more conventionally satisfying climax for the US market. All the same, it provided one hell of a cliffhanger setup for a 4th movie, which of course, sadly never came to pass. Number 9. Invasion of the Body Snatchers. 1978's Invasion of the Body Snatchers is one of the greatest remakes, horror or otherwise, ever made, and that's in large part due to its courage to commit to an unrelentingly bleak finale. While the original 1956 film concludes with humanity fighting back against the extraterrestrial pods, this remake hews closer to the 56 film's bleaker original ending, where humanity is basically snuffed out by the aliens. In the final scene, protagonist Matthew meets up with one of the city's few human survivors, Nancy, but at that moment he opens his mouth wide, shrieks and points at Nancy, revealing he's also been duplicated by the pods and surely sealing Nancy's fate in the process. The wider implication, of course, is that humans are helpless to defend against the pods, who, after taking the city, will surely wipe out the rest of the human race and effectively leave Earth a dead planet, at least as far as our presence is concerned. Number 8. In the Mouth of Madness. John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness is the 3rd entry into the filmmaker's aptly titled Apocalypse trilogy, behind The Thing and Prince of Darkness, and similarly concludes with an utterly hopeless prognosis for humanity. In the bewildering finale, protagonist John Trent wakes up to learn that the world has descended into apocalyptic anarchy as Lovecraftian creatures have wreaked havoc, causing an epidemic of mass killing and bodily mutations to sweep the globe. Due to the number of uninfected dwindling by the minute and major cities falling silent by the hour, emergency services are said to be suspended, leaving those few who remain to fend for themselves before they too are inevitably killed. As both a conclusion to the film and the final word from Carpenter's epic trilogy, it was certainly a fitting bleak note to sign off on. Number 7. Pulse. 2001's J-horror classic Pulse takes a most ridiculous of concepts, ghosts invading our world through the internet, and makes it utterly transfixing to behold, largely thanks to the fine atmospheric world-building from legendary filmmaker Kiyoshi Kurosawa. The eerie happenings eventually ramp up to the point where people begin disappearing in vast numbers as ghosts invade Tokyo, ultimately leaving it a desolate shell of its former self. Though our protagonists make it to the apparent safety of a boat at the end, they're informed that the same supernatural phenomena are also taking place all over the world, while the ending leaves their fates eerily ambiguous. But it doesn't take much reading between the lines to appreciate that the plague, or whatever the hell it is going to win, having spread worldwide, while humanity has no clue whatsoever of how to keep it at bay. Number 6. The Last Winter. 2 years before M. Night Shyamalan's The Happening was released, Larry Fessenden's cult horror flick The Last Winter came out, touting a similar theme, where nature itself appears to have turned against humanity for its abuse of the planet. In this case, the world has unleashed the titular Last Winter upon humanity, where spectral animals materialize to wipe the humans out by any means necessary for their trespasses against the land they call home. By the film's end, researcher Abby is the only surviving main character, and after waking up in the hospital, she heads outside to see something which is kept hidden from our view. But it's clear from Abby's reaction that it's nothing good, the implication being that the days of both herself and the rest of the human race are agonizingly numbered. It's certainly not subtle as environmental allegories go, but damn it, The Last Winter sure is a tense and well-acted effort. Number 5. The Beyond. 1981 horror classic The Beyond follows a woman, Liza, who is refurbishing a New Orleans hotel she inherited, which, as it turns out, happens to contain one of the world's 7 gates to hell. When a plumber accidentally opens said gate, all hell progressively and literally breaks loose, with numerous employees dying mysteriously, including Liza's architect getting eaten alive by a pack of tarantulas, of course. Even accepting that director Lucio Fulci clearly doesn't have much interest in telling an easily understood, logically concrete story, the ending makes it clear that the world is basically doomed. Despite their attempts to flee, Liza and local Dr. John McCabe end up trapped and blinded in a barren wasteland that might or might not be hell itself. And in case this isn't existentially terrifying enough, they're also surrounded by corpses. Though there's plenty ambiguous about the chilling ending, the gate to hell is evidently wide open and is going to have its way with a human race that is utterly incapable of closing it. Number 4. Shivers. David Cronenberg's 1975 feature debut Shivers was nothing if not a stellar indication of the wild career that would await its director, revolving as it does around the residents of a high-rise apartment building who become infected with a parasite that turns them into violently sex-crazed lunatics. The goal of the scientists who created it? Well, that was to turn the world into one beautiful, mindless orgy. And boy, do they sure seem to get their wish by the film's end. Sans the whole beautiful part, though. The parasite hasn't only turned the apartment building into a hotbed of sex and violence, as a news report reveals that the epidemic has spread out of the building and into the wider Montreal area. Needless to say, the suggestion is very clear that the parasite will continue to spread and, with almost absolute certainty, reduce the entirety of the human race to its basest instincts, ensuring widespread murder and mayhem in the process. Number 3. Hellhole. This little-known Polish horror gem was quietly dumped on Netflix back in 2022, but it's a pretty damn solid mashup of The Omen and The Wicker Man with a splash of its own unique international flavor. Hellhole is set in a monastery in 1987 as a cop investigates a series of disappearances connected to it. Living up, or maybe down, to its title, it's revealed at the end of the movie that the church houses a portal to hell, with the clergy plotting to make our protagonist part of a ritual that will allow the devil to possess his body, while said clergy plan to help the devil preside over hell on earth. And indeed, in the finale, he is turned into a demon, and unwittingly transforms Earth into a hellscape, making it horrifyingly apparent that the world and everyone in it is absolutely positively screwed. Number 2. Significant Other. Significant Other stars the great Micah Monroe and Jake Lacey as Ruth and Harry, a couple whose camping trip goes spectacularly wrong. They end up encountering aliens that can imitate humans, but when Ruth crosses paths with the alien imposter of Harry, he reveals that the extraterrestrials are planning to invade and destroy Earth before offering her a chance to flee the planet with him. Ruth violently refuses, though she's ultimately powerless to do anything to stop the impending invasion, with the film's final moments showing a distraught Ruth watching as the aliens arrive. Basically, the destruction of Earth is imminent, and there's zero chance of humanity acting fast enough to put up much of a fight, especially with prior scenes establishing that the aliens can take an incredible amount of punishment without dying. For a streaming sci-fi horror flick that came and went without much fanfare though, this one's pretty damn solid, and well worth checking out for both the lo-fi vibes and Micah Monroe's reliably committed performance. Number 1. End of the World. And finally, we'll wrap up this list with a pretty deep cut now, by way of Charles Band's low-budget 1977 sci-fi horror, End of the World. Is it an excellent movie by most conventional standards? No. And did Christopher Lee get tricked into starring in it? Yes. But for all its deficiencies, the film is a ton of bargain basement fun. Love or hate it, in the very least it delivers exactly what its title promises. The unambiguous, undeniable end of the world and human existence as we know it in its final scene. The film sees a race of aliens attempting to destroy the world by causing a series of natural disasters, in turn purging the galaxy of the plague that is humanity. And true to the aliens' word, the final shot of the movie shows Earth violently exploding, just like the Death Star did in Star Wars the very same year. Given the expectation that the heroes would find a way to prevent the world's destruction, it's refreshing that this film followed through on the promises of its name.